Today we're stepping inside 3 beautiful farmhouses where history, creativity, and the rhythms of country life shape every corner. First, we travel to historic Fredericksburg, Virginia to visit content creators Mary Catherine and Joel Butterworth, whose welcoming farmhouse has turned into a dream family home.
I had always wanted to raise a family on land. I'm really into gardening, chickens, livestock, so I just envisioned this as a beautiful place to raise our family.
Next, we head to the rolling hills of Roxbury, Connecticut, where designer Glenn Gisler has lovingly restored an 1840 Greek Revival farmhouse surrounded by protected woodland and steeped in artistic history.
It's a perfectly charming Greek Revival farmhouse from the 19th century, but there's a lot of those in New England. But what was remarkable about this house was this rich cultural history.
And finally, we travel to St. Louis, Missouri to visit J.R. Wider, a content creator and collector who has transformed her charming 1920s farmhouse into a warm and timeless home filled with antiques, estate sale finds, and thoughtful DIY touches.
I like to live my life. If you find something that you love for your house, you should buy it because you can always find a spot for it.
Together, these homes capture the enduring magic of farmhouse living, spaces rooted in history shaped by personal creativity and designed to be lived in and loved for generations. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Mary Catherine Butterworth.
And I'm Joel Butterworth.
And welcome to our home in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm Joel Butterworth. I'm a dentist.
And I'm Mary Catherine Butterworth, and I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4.
We are in historic Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is 50 miles south of our capital, DC. The city of Fredericksburg was very influential during the Civil War, and the spot where we currently sit is in Stafford, South Stafford, so a little town called Falmouth, which is just over the Rappahannock River. And our property actually was an artillery stage for the Union Army during the Civil War. So I had always wanted to live on land, and Mary Catherine was a little indifferent about that. So I had showed her a couple places in town, and we had gone and looked. And the actual story is we came and looked at the house, and she looked at me and said, "No way, we're not doing it. It's too much work. It's gonna need X amount of money. There's no way we can financially do it." And we were under contract that night on the house. I had always wanted to raise a family on land. I'm really into gardening, chickens, livestock, so I just envisioned this as a beautiful place to raise our family, and it didn't take long to get Mary Catherine on board with that. And then she was able to add her touch to the house.
Yeah, once I realized the opportunity we had here in the space and what we could do with everything, I jumped on board really quick, and it's been an amazing project to work on.
Welcome to the entry hall. This is the first space you would see when you enter the house. It is a colonial center hall style of a home. So you have this big hallway with doors on both sides. That is the original front of the house, but throughout the time it's been changed to the back door. But what's amazing about it is you can open both doors. We're perched up on a hill, and then you get a beautiful breeze through the hallway. The colonial center hall is symmetrical on both sides, so you have the same amount of square footage upstairs and downstairs on both sides of the hallway. Since then, there's been additions to the house, but when you looked at a colonial center hall photo from the 1800s, it basically just looked like a square, and it was all focused around a center hallway. So to me, this is the most prominent feature of the house. All the molding is original. We have the dental molding up top. We have the chair molding down below, and at one point there was picture molding where you would hang pictures instead of putting nails into the sheetrock. I think the most interesting part about the house is the stairwell, to save space, was actually circular. So it's a circular stairwell that goes up to the second floor, and the reason that they did that was to save space. The other cool part about our entryway is this painting was a wedding present from Mary Catherine to me, and it has kind of bounced around our home. So I like that it's one of the first things that you see when you come into the house. And obviously this massive mirror from Indonesia is another cool feature.
So a couple of my favorite features that we have in the center hall here is this light fixture. I used to have a design store a few years ago, and this actually hung in the store. And when we moved here, I felt that it just fit perfectly in this space because the ceiling heights are amazing in here. And we have, this hallway is so uniquely wide that we were able to accommodate larger design pieces, larger pieces of art. We have this amazing Willie Gould planter that I found at market that I fell in love with, and it just, I feel like it really anchors the space. And a couple large pieces of art that we have on the wall here. This is a painter, I believe his name is Sam Ward out of Savannah, and these are two of his pieces that I picked up at market as well. So all of the flooring in the home, aside from the kitchen, is original to the home. So as I had mentioned before, the house was built around 1740. So it does have a lot of like grooves in it and scratches, and I just love the way that it's aged over time. And another thing that we did to the home that I feel like feels very time period is all of the doorways. We actually arched them. When we originally bought the house, the doorways were super low. People weren't quite as tall back then. And so we worked with a carpenter who created this sort of custom molding, and we opened up every single doorway in the home just to make it feel a little bit more grand.
When Mary Catherine first mentioned that to our contractor, he almost quit.
But we found a fantastic carpenter. He did an amazing job, and we all felt that it looks very original to the home and not something that was an afterthought. All right, so now we'll take you into our dining room. All right, so welcome to our dining room. Obviously, when we first started renovating the house, we wanted this to be more of a traditional dining room. And we have 4 small children, and so it almost never gets used as a formal dining room, but we have actually sort of converted it into an office and art room. So Joel takes a lot of his work calls in here. I sit in here a lot with the kids and do puzzles, and we color and we paint. And we've really filled this room with like all of my most favorite things. I absolutely love art, and I love ceramics and pottery and little stones and things. And so over the years, all of those things that I've collected, we've just kind of scattered them throughout the room. And it's just a really special room to me. I really love just the feel in here and the way this chandelier is at night. It's very moody, and it's my happy place.
I would say my favorite part of this room is this painting back here. I think with the plant, it just really fits the wall. This is Jamie Chase. He's an artist, I believe, out of New Mexico. And this was the first piece that we bought when Mary Catherine opened her design store. I remember it was literally the first dollar we spent was on this painting, and we had people offer to buy it when it was hanging in the store, and
I couldn't part with it.
Couldn't part with it. The other thing I like is to collect books that have any history of the home. So I have all these books on Fredericksburg, Battle of Fredericksburg, South Stafford, and just they all tell a different history of the house. And one of the coolest things I have is the actual original insurance from the house from 1765, I believe, and how much it was insured for in the property. So it's just cool I love collecting little history of the house. This glass head here was another great find.
Yeah, we found it from an art dealer, and they knew that it came from Canada at some point, and we did a lot of digging to try and figure out who made this, and we ended up realizing on the bottom, which we thought was just like a scribble or a scratch, was actually a signature from the artist, and this was done like in the 50s, I believe, and we ended up like tracing over the actual signature, and it took, I don't know, couple
weeks.
days, weeks, and we were able to find out the artist. But this is, it's all glass, and it's quite heavy, but she's a great little addition on our table.
And of course, a room in this house would not be complete without a fireplace. We have many of them. They are all wood burning. We have not converted any of them, and they actually can all do a fire. We really only burn in the kitchen, but we could do a fire in pretty much every room in this house. And this art on the mantle is by your very own talented Mary Catherine here. So she also has a little artistic side to her, as you can see based on the design of the house.
So Joel and I both went to college at Charleston. He was 2 years older than me, but we didn't actually start dating until after we both had graduated. He was in dental school, and I was living in Charleston. After I had graduated, he was down there for a summer with friends. We ended up on the same kickball team, and the rest is history. We moved to Oregon together for his residency, and then we came back to Fredericksburg, Virginia for his work. He is a dentist, and he took over his mom's practice, and we have been here for about 7 years.
She's being modest. She caught a ball, a diving catch in the outfield, our first game of kickball, and that's what really sold me.
And a little bit about my background. In January of 2020, I signed a lease on a space in town to open a design store. What fantastic timing with the pandemic. But it was wonderful. I had it for almost 2 years, and I was able to travel around to different markets and collect art and interiors and a lot of beautiful things. I also do flower arrangements, and so one of the big things that I offered at my shop was custom arrangements. And living here on this property, I feel very lucky because we have a lot of woods around us, and Joel has planted some amazing gardens, so I'm actually able to do a lot of fresh cut arrangements here. And I now have a lot of the items from the store in the home, which is really special to me. And I do hope once the kiddos get a little bit older to open another store.
So we have 4 kids. Our youngest is 4 weeks old, and he was actually born in one of our cars, which was a great story, and now he has a first car for life. But we have a 5-year-old daughter, 4-year-old son, 2-year-old daughter, and 4-week-old boy. So boy, girl. And we couldn't be happier. It is insane chaos right now. I tell everybody that asks how it is that if they've ever watched Chopped on TV, it's like being in the Chopped kitchen 24/7 from the second your eyes open till the second they close. But I don't think we would trade it for anything. We also have 4 dogs, we have chickens, we have cats, you name it, we got it. And it takes a lot to make everything work, and I don't think I could do it with anybody else.
All right, we're gonna go from the dining room into the bar. Originally, the house, this would have been a butler's pantry that would have been closed off. So when they were entertaining, everything would have been done in here. All the food would have been brought out to the dining room or the library. But this was actually a really tiny little doorway here. And because we arched all of the doorways throughout the house, we wanted it to stay cohesive. So we actually arched all through here and this other arch here just to open it up so that the bar really flowed into the dining room. And we kept kind of the original footprint of it. We just updated the cabinets and added some Brazilian soapstone. And then we had the carpenter who did all of our archways built these great shelves for us, and we have all of our beloved glasses that we sort of have collected in a lot of different places here, and the kids do their homework here and play. And
yeah, I would say this is a desk mainly for the kids. We had envisioned it as a place where we would sit down and work, but with the flow of the house, we can't get any work done there. So that's just where we put the kids to do homework and color. No judgment on the alcohol here, but we do like to have a aperitif almost nightly.
And we entertain a lot, so our families are here with us a lot, and we gather at our house a lot with friends just because we have so much space for all the kiddos to run around. And I would say this is like the main thoroughfare of our house because it goes from like the bedrooms and the entryway through the kitchen, where of course we live because we have 4 children.
My cocktail of choice changes seasonally, I would say. I get really hot on one thing, and then the next day I'm on to something else. Currently, I'm really into a Campari soda. Before that, it was a gin martini with a twist. Before that, it was a Negroni. It changes daily. But when I get on one, I beat it hard for a few weeks, and then I'm on to the next.
I would say my cocktail of choice, I love an Aperol Spritz pretty much any time of year. My favorite wine is Rioja, so we have a little wine cooler here that we always have stocked. All right, let's go into the kitchen.
Okay, the kitchen is where we spend 99% of our time. We both really like to cook, we bake. We're trying to teach the kids to do the same, and I'd say most of our time is spent right here around this beautiful island that Mary designed. Like she said earlier, this is all soapstone, which is really cool because we can beat it up as much as we want, and having the kids, it does scratch, but it kind of is wearing in a way that like looks like the kitchen is used, which I really appreciate. I remember when we first got the soapstone, everyone was like, be really careful, it's so soft. And somebody like dragged a sheet pan across right here, like the day we moved in, and I was like, no! And it's now I love it. Like the more scratches, the more chips in the stone, like the cooler it is to me, because I want a kitchen like that looks worn. But most of these veggies we grow. We have a bunch of peppers, still getting a lot of peppers. We have tomatoes, our chickens, we have a dozen eggs a day, which is nice.
So another really great thing about the soapstone, although it does scratch, if you keep it oiled pretty regularly with mineral oil, a lot of the surface scratches actually, it like fills them in and it disappears. So it has worn really beautifully, but it is also functional, and this particular soapstone is really unique because traditionally they tend to be like a lighter or darker gray, and this actually is a green Brazilian soapstone with really incredible cream colored veining in it. And when we found, there were like 2 slabs, we found them and we just kind of knew it would fit perfectly with the kitchen.
The range and stove we spent a lot of time looking at. We knew obviously that we wanted gas, so we had natural gas plumbed to the house. But we wanted something that looked classic as well, and I think that these features in this oven, it's an Ilve, so it's an Italian brand, and I think it really is what we wanted. We were kind of on a budget when it came to picking out kitchen appliances, because that was the last thing that we ended up doing, and all the arch doorways took up all of our budget, so we had to go with a little bit more affordable range, and I think that this one is amazing for its price. The other thing I always wanted in a kitchen was a pot filler. The other cool thing that our contractor did was plastered our vent hood, and I think this is very unique because you don't see it that often. Most people just put up the prefab ones right on the wall, and I think this is a very unique feature to the kitchen.
And one thing that I really wanted in the kitchen, I wanted it to feel very open. I didn't want to have any upper cabinets. We do have a really large pantry that we're able to house all of our glasses and plates and everything in. So I wanted the space to feel light. I wanted to be able to feature art. So we did away with any upper cabinets that were here. We added some lighting. And then, like every other room, I have, all of my beloved ceramics and pots and just different things that I've collected from different places I absolutely adore. We have some art in the kitchen, which I think is unique because I don't feel like you always see art in the kitchen. And we do have a wood-burning fireplace. We tend to start fires in October, November, and we're able to have a fire all the way through March, April, even May. We tried to keep the original footprint of this kitchen. This was added onto the home in 1900, so this is the most recent addition to the house. So the kitchen, it was quite dark and heavy. It was wood everywhere, so we took down the upper cabinets. This area here was actually all really dark, heavy wooden cabinets. We made them, this is now our pantry. We keep all of our plates, dishes, some gardening things in there. So these have really, they have provided us a lot of storage so that we don't have to have so much in the kitchen. The original format of the kitchen, it was a big L shape here, and I wanted there to be more of a natural flow when you walk through the side door. So we took that out and added an island, which, you know, especially if you have kids, when you entertain a lot, a lot of people naturally gravitate towards the island. And then there were very heavy cabinets that were built up all along this area, and there was just a tiny doorway to the butler's pantry. So we blew that all out, arched this so that there's a much better flow from the kitchen into the rest of the home.
This is our little breakfast nook where we eat every meal. It is getting quite small for the size of the family that we have, and gonna need to either get a bigger table or add some chairs. But we spent a lot of time here, spent a lot of time on the island, and then we did put a little TV in here. We're not big TV watchers, but I do love to watch golf and sports. So Sunday afternoons, we have the TV on while we're cooking, eating. And this is a really cool mirror that Mary Catherine found. It is African porcupine, actually. So I think that's a little unique piece that we have in here.
So this piece of art, this was an artist that I actually had in my shop. His name is Tommaso Fatovich. He is out of Miami, and I love the way all of the colors in this piece really tie into everything we have going on in the kitchen. And I also love large scale art, so it couldn't be more perfect for this wall. So this piece of art here is an artist, Sidney King, who is originally from Boston, but he moved to Bowling Green, Virginia, pretty early on in his career, and that's actually where Joel grew up. So it's in Caroline County, so it's about 30 minutes from here. And Sidney King did a lot of landscape pieces in the Caroline County area, but he's actually pretty famous for all of his Civil War paintings. He has some really incredible oil paintings of different battles, and we actually picked this up at a local antique store. And again, I just think the colors just go so beautifully with this kitchen.
And I'm an avid duck hunter, so this piece to me specifically speaks. And when the fire's going under here, the orange and the marsh grass and everything, just like to stand here and stare at it.
And now we are going to head over into the living room.
Welcome to the living room. This room we actually don't spend much time in. Our daughter likes to sit in here and watch TV occasionally, but again, another beautiful fireplace with the mantles all done by hand. The molding in this part of the house, this is all dental molding up top. It was in really bad shape when we bought the house, and our contractor was adamant about putting every little piece back together by hand. You can actually buy this stuff in sheets, and the thing that we love about our contractor is he said, no, we're going to hire a carpenter and we're going to build it back to the way it was. So all of this molding up top, especially on this wall, there was a carpenter in here putting these little tiny pieces in one at a time with a little spacer. And I can't imagine how crazy he was after he did all that, because it just seems like very mundane work. But that's the way that things were done. And you can tell, like, on this mantle too, like all of this is just hand carved, and they just don't do stuff like that anymore. In typical Mary Catherine fashion, we have an enormous lamp as well, because she likes things grand. We have a very large marble table here that I actually had to put a joist underneath in the cellar because the table weighs 700 pounds, and it seemed like the floor was going to cave in when they put the table in here. So this is actually held up from the bottom.
I'll mention that this would have been back in the 1800s, this would have been like the entertaining room, because this is really the only other space in the house. They used the dining room just really for eating, so this is where they would have met. This would have been, I guess, traditionally more like a library. And we get really incredible light through here, and we arch the doorways in here. And I will say my favorite little detail is this original Greek key around the molding. And it really was pretty spectacular to watch the carpenter have to come in here and individually nail in each one of these pieces. And it just makes you really appreciate all of the detail that really went into these homes when they were originally built. So I will say this bench is really fantastic. I got it from a dealer in Canada, and it is actually African springbok. And it's really, the colors in it are fantastic, and our kids actually love to lay on it. And because it's springbok, it's really durable, so anything that spills on it, you can wipe right off. We have really tried to furnish our home with things that are that can wear very well with sticky little fingers running around. And I will say another set of chairs that I love, I found these at the Tobacco Factory in Asheville, North Carolina, which I know was decimated in the hurricane, which is terrible. It was a really fantastic like vintage antique market. But we found them there a few years ago, and they've traveled with us to a couple different homes, and we've moved them around into different rooms to see, where we like them. But they're really cool, kind of modern, and all this leather is really fantastic. I would say my overall style is really a mix of a lot of different things. I absolutely love antique and vintage pieces, and I think they pair so beautifully with modern pieces and traditional pieces. And I think that what I've tried to do in this home is keep the integrity of the older home in sort of a European style, and add in our flair of some avant-garde pieces and some things that are a little bit modern, but trying to keep it really exciting and fresh, but also stay true to this really beautiful historic home.
Now we'll take you upstairs to show you the primary bedroom. Welcome to the bedroom. My favorite part of this room is the exposed beams. These are actually part of the structure of the house, so these are structural. And what's cool about them is this is wood. This is 300, 400-year-old wood. And you can see some of the staining from all the handmade nails. But what's really neat is almost all of the structure of the house and the main part is all mortise and tenon. So nothing is held together by anything except a bunch of joints. If you go in the attic, there's a king truss up there, which is massive. I mean, 3 times the size of this, and all the beams coming off of it are all mortise and tenon. It's just really neat how they handcrafted homes. But there was a hallway right here, a wall, so when we blew the wall down and exposed this, we were like, oh my gosh, we have to keep this in the bedroom. And I think it's cool because it kind of like separates the bedroom a little bit. Like we have a little sitting area right there, and then kind of leads us into the main bedroom. Okay, and we love our plants, obviously. So we have 2 massive monsteras in here, which seem to love the light. There's one in that back corner, and then this one here, another beautiful fireplace as well. The trickiest part about renovating this room was actually trying to figure out how we were gonna make the bathroom large enough to fit a shower and a tub. So we had to steal some space from the bedroom and had to get really creative on how we fit everything into the room, but I think it turned out very nicely.
Okay, we can walk through here into the master bath. One thing that we had to figure out when, putting the layout in here was how we were able to accommodate a shower, a tub, sinks without it feeling too tight. This was a really small space, and I think the contractor did a really great job fitting everything in so it doesn't feel too crammed. One thing that I absolutely love in the bathroom here is this table. So all of this wood actually came out of the wall that we had ripped down to enlarge the bedroom, and our carpenter was able to make this into a vanity. I found a picture online that I adored, and he was able to replicate it for us. So it's very special to know that this was the wood that was original to the home, and I think it turned out beautifully. We have stone sinks that we got, I believe we found them online, but I think they're from India. And I love all the different textures and sort of keeping it a little bit monotone. And all of the tile on the floor and in the shower is Moroccan tile.
My favorite room in the house is the potting shed. I love to start things from seeds and watch them grow over time. And so I like to spend a lot of time in there, especially at night. When the light is right coming off of the siding, it's just the perfect vibe.
I would say my favorite space in our home was our dining room, which we have now converted into sort of an art studio and office. It's a really beautiful room, and I love everything that we've added in there, and I found that we use it a lot more now as an office than we do traditionally as a dining room. And our kids love to sit in there and paint and color, and it feels like a very creative, sort of bohemian, whimsical space.
Welcome to the guest house. We also have a guest star, our youngest, Bond, who was born in a car, as we told you earlier. Please come on in. Welcome to the guest house. This has proved to be a really nice place to put our parents. Since our inside, we really don't have a good guest space. So when we first bought the main house, we were kind of just cramming everybody in as we had guests, and we made it a priority that we wanted to tackle this. And this room right here was the structure. You can see these beams that we had going into the island. This was the outside wall. The coolest thing to me about this house is you can actually see the char marks from a fire on the original structure in here, which is cool. We read in one of the books that there was a fire on the property and they actually were able to save all the structure. So this is just evidence that that actually did happen. And I think that's just really neat to see that there's evidence of a fire from hundreds of years ago in the house. The beams in this main space, we did have to lift them up. They were down about right here, and to make the space look bigger, we decided that raising the beams a good 18 inches or so would make the room look a little more grand. And these beams are actually from a church downtown Fredericksburg because the existing beams were in bad shape, so we had to relocate some beams. But our contractor was able to find some beams from an old church, and I think they match very well.
As Joel had mentioned, when we purchased the house, this space particularly was it was difficult to work with. So to make the space feel more open, we decided to blow through the ceiling, open that up. There are tiny little windows up there that allow a lot more light in. And there was a wall right through here, so when we opened that up and we found these beams, we knew that we needed to make them sort of a focal point in the kitchen. And we blew through, there was a doorway here, blew through the doorway and the wall to open this up and then fit in a simple kitchen. We have about 2 people that stay in here at a time, so they're able to move around here easily, make breakfast. But I wanted it to feel really clean and open, but have some character to really match, the character of the property. And I decided to go very last minute with red cabinets. And I think at first Joel was a little taken aback by the red, but I felt that it could, really work well in the space. And then, we put some white marble on top, and we've really enjoyed it. We actually come over here a lot with friends and sit on the screened-in porch and have cocktails, and the kids like to swing on the swing behind the house here. And we wondered if we would really use the guest house, and we've spent a ton of time over here, and our guests really enjoy having a little bit of a private oasis away from the chaos of our home.
This is another beautiful piece that Mary Catherine painted, and I think it just fits here perfectly. It just shows how talented she is. And the one thing that I really wanted in this space was a screened-in porch. So we found a way to add a screened-in porch off the side. This was not here when we bought the property. So this screened-in porch was an addition, and we spend a ton of time out here. Gets a little buggy in the humid, deep months of the summer here, so we like to sit out here, pick crabs, have cocktails, listen to music. It's turned out to be a great space. All right, welcome to the potting shed. This is my favorite place on the property. This is where I start all my seeds for the summer. This is where I overwinter plants. We keep a lot of our citrus in here because it doesn't do well when temperatures drop in the fall. But favorite parts about this are the cedar walls. So all of this I did. This potting shed, which is attached to our chicken coop, was really worn down, dilapidated when we bought the property. There was a brick patio here that was fully overgrown. So this was a labor of love for like 6 months, putting a new roof on it, jacking the structure up. I found a bunch of antique windows to make the front wall, old windows for the back, and the coolest thing is this sink right here. It is a concrete sink, and there is no way that 4 men could even lift this. We had to jimmy rig a tractor pulley situation to get it in here. I built the stand for the sink from wood that came out of the house. So I think this is just a really cool feature. I spent a lot of time in here, mainly in the early spring months, just getting things ready to go with a cocktail, Van Morrison going. It's really my safe space in here. This is the chicken coop, which actually is attached to the potting shed, which I think is pretty cool. One thing I really wanted before we moved to the property, I've always wanted chickens just for their benefit, for the environment for one. We'd never throw away food scraps. Every food scrap goes to the chicken. We get an insane amount of eggs. We probably go through a dozen eggs a day with all the kids and myself and Mary Catherine. So we kind of fluctuate between like 12 to 30 chickens, depending on how bad the fox problem is at the time, which is a whole nother story. But they used to free range the entire property, but we have such a bad fox problem, we were losing too many. So we decided to put up this fence. Since then, they've been pretty safe. But the breed we have right now are Isa Browns, and then we have one all-white rooster, which is really pretty. But the kids love to go in here, get the eggs every day. It's part of their chore list. Just love hearing chicken sounds in the background when I'm in the potting shed. It's a really just nice way to live.
What does home mean to me? I would say it is a space that is filled with all of my most favorite things and treasures and things I've collected and little pieces of art that our kids have made. And we do have 4 kids, and it's a very kind of wild and chaotic space, and home, I think, just feels like a place that's filled with love and special memories.
I would agree with that. Home to me is a place where there's always a kid screaming and just a place you never want to leave. I think when we get home from work on the weekends, we almost never leave the house. And I think a lot of people don't have that in a home, and I feel really special to have a home where I just honestly never want to leave.
Today we're in Roxbury, Connecticut, a quiet, nearly untouched corner of Litchfield County, where rolling hills and protected woodlands have long drawn artists, writers, and dreamers seeking space to create.
This is gouache on paper by Donald Bachelor, and it was something I bought from an art dealer friend in the late 1980s when I first moved to New York City. And I paid him $100 a month for 7 months to get this work. What's interesting about this is that Donald Bachelor's work is always kind of these primitive elements, and so it says Donald, so we'll take it as a self-portrait, but beneath that, you can maybe sort of see it. There's something that they call pentimento, which is when an artist changes their mind and paints something over it later. And what the pentimento is in this case, it's actually his father. So there's something about the father-son relationship there, which I think is quite remarkable.
Here, designer Glenn Gisler has restored an 1840 Greek Revival farmhouse with a deep reverence for history, art, and architecture. Recently listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the house stands as a living testament to preservation, imagination, and the enduring dialogue between art and design.
At one point in January 1945, David and Jacqueline, I think, went to Arizona for 9 months. And during that time period, they loaned the house to Arshil Gorky. When I first found this out, I couldn't believe it. I said, this is crazy. And so Arshil Gorky lived in this house for 9 months, from January to September 1945. And many of the, there are many books on Arshil Gorky, and I've been able to trace artworks that would have been created out in the studio building.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, Homeworthy. My name's Glenn Gisler. I'm really excited to show you my antique house in Roxbury, Connecticut. Come on in. Hello, Homeworthy. My name's Glenn Gisler. I'm an interior designer based in New York City, and I want to welcome you to my house in Roxbury, Connecticut. This is the first house that I've ever owned on my own. It is 100 and at this point 185 years old, and I didn't fully understand what that meant. I loved all of the existing architecture, the wide plank floors, the layout of the rooms, the baluster on the stairs, the facade of the house, but I didn't fully understand what it was to take care of a really old house. And so I've done the most to do the least, which is to preserve what's here, but to fortify the infrastructure and enhance the experience of being in the house. Interior design at its best is really a kind of portraiture of the people whose home we're designing. It's challenging to do a self-portrait. You know, I don't necessarily have the same level of objectivity, but at the same time, it's a process of becoming. That is, my interests in art and architecture and cultural history all become manifest in this house. I've been collecting art and objects for decades and recombining, editing, and eventually it becomes more and more a self-portrait of myself at this point in my life. It reflects my values and my interest in art and my interest in including lots of people in my life. That is, the house is big enough that I can accommodate house guests. I've also got a very big dining table so I can serve dinners for 6, 8, or 10 people. And I've got multiple places to serve meals, and I love to have people around. The house is a kind of vessel waiting to be activated by my guests. Welcome to the entry foyer of my house. I prefer that people really use the front door of my house as opposed to spilling into the kitchen. I'd like to say hello to my guests, have enough room to give them a hug and welcome them into my house, and this is the space that we do that. The room is as it was, but I've added some artwork into the space. There's a drawing over here by Wilfred Zogbaum, who's an abstract expressionist sculptor. This is from 1955. And this is a collage by Conrad Marcarelli from 1970. The curious chairs here are actually from 1820. They're English hall chairs, but they have a kind of geometric edge to them that give them much more of a kind of modern sensibility. The pedestal here is a Biedermeier pedestal. And then I've collected locally some bittersweet that are spilling out of this big Chinese pot. The rug in here is a cotton hooked rug, which would have been the kind of rug that would have been in a house like this. And it is a rug I designed in what's called falling block pattern, which you might have seen in classical architecture in Italy or Greece. So it's got kind of classical overtones to it. These are the original stairs that were here. I painted them a dark brown. They had been painted many colors before, but I wanted the architecture to stand out well. And then going up the stair, there are some pictures. There's a 1940s anonymous painting in its original frame, which has a kind of Noguchi lamp in it, and beneath that is an African mask. It sets the tone of a kind of art-filled house. And if you'll follow me, I'll take you into the library. So this room would be really considered a kind of proper parlor. This is where you'd greet your guests in the 19th century. It would have been the sort of most formal room in the house. And it still is to some extent, although I keep a fairly low-key vibe in the house. It's a curious room. I keep art and design books about colonial architecture, mid-century art and furniture, and decorative arts. The ceiling has a wallpaper from Farrow and Ball, which has got gilded bumblebees across it. And particularly at night, with candles lit, it gives a kind of shimmery atmosphere to the room. There's many things in this house by a furniture designer named Robs John Gibbings. Robs John Gibbings did a book in the 60s called Furniture of Classical Greece. And what he did is he went and he looked at the black pots that we've seen in museums and recreated furniture based on those designs. And so and over here we have a pair of klizmos chairs, which are really sort of based on this ancient Greek form that you see on the front of the book. The coffee table is also by him, which has its classical forms to it, but that was part of a collection he did for Whitcomb around 1950. And the sofa is also designed by him. It's actually unusual to find fully upholstered works by T.H. Robs John Gibbings. And this, I've got an antique Suzanne textile on it and some crushed velvet pillows. Tempietto, which sits on a marble pedestal behind the sofa, I found at a yard sale on Shelter Island. It was $10. It's one of those things that I walked in and I saw it. I didn't even care what the price was, but it was $10, and I really love how it has strong classical bones, and yet it's kind of handmade and has, it's just a simple painted wood structure. I haven't done anything to restore it or paint it and make it any fancier. On the walls in here, most of the artwork is really text-based. This is a text work by the artist Kenny Goldsmith, who I went to school with at Rhode Island School of Design. And you see that there's one layer on the front of words, and on the back there's another layer, and so that it becomes a kind of graphic element. Over here, this is a drawing by my daughter when I think she was 10, and it's also got text in it, and it's the silhouette of the Statue of Liberty. And below that is I guess back when they used to actually teach cursive, this is a early 19th century a practice sheet, and it says harmonious, 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 harmonious. Over here, there's a couple more text works. There's this one on the top is actually by my older brother, Gary, who's a psychoanalyst and an artist. And believe it or not, this is a hand transcribed every word from a chapter from Moby Dick, where he wrote it over and over and over again. So it becomes a kind of abstract, becomes an abstract shape. And then this is another text work. This is, I think, in Arabic by a poet with the last name Jallar. The lamp here I got from a dealer in Stockholm. Weighs a lot. It's ceramic, but has the kind of pock marks of the moon. The other thing that's in this room is a collection of things by an early English industrial designer named Sir Christopher Dresser. He worked in ceramics. This is something he did in ceramics. It's a curious kind of object. He also designed this teapot in 1879, which looks kind of Bauhaus in its kind of modernity. There's terracotta works that are up here. These are flower frogs, ceramics. I have quite a few of his things. There's some over here. These are called fire dogs, and these would sit in front of your fireplace on the hearth, and your equipment would sit across it. So these are early 19th. This is 19th century industrial design. Some of the things are really quite extraordinary. These are also by Christopher Dresser. The other thing that we have in this room is an artwork by a neighbor, which was Alexander Calder. His house is about a mile or so from here. He was a young artist at the time and bought an 18th century house, and this is a work by Alexander Calder. This is a 1830s Biedermeier cabinet. I use it for my drinks table. These photographs here are experimental photographs by David Hare, the artist who lived here in 1940. They were experimental works that he did in the darkroom. So this is a print by the artist Susan Rothenberg. I'm not sure what you see, but it actually is a horse approaching you. Some people I've asked about it and they aren't sure what they're looking at. It looks like an abstract form, but I can sort of see the horse's head and the leg that's bent here and another leg here, but other people have seen it as just an abstract form. This is from the 1970s. So, the thing is as you grow older, 1970s is, 50 years ago. So, these things become part of history. Well, this is a 17th century. Can you believe it? 17th century. So what does that mean? It's like 500 years old. It's a gilded frame with an antique mirror in it. I just love its simplicity and the architecture and the boldness of it. I had wanted a house outside the city in New York for more than 30 years. And finally, I had the resources to pursue that dream. I ended up in Roxbury, Connecticut, based on some recommendations by friends. And on the first day out, I saw this house. It was an antique house on 8 acres of land, which I didn't fully understand at the time. But it was in this community that had a lot of antique homes, and I could afford it, and that held a lot of appeal for me. This house was built in 1840. It was built by Ezekiel Beardsley, and that's sort of what I knew about the house. There was a family who had lived here for 50 years with the last name Kuhn, K-U-H-N, and they were endeared in the community because they had lived here a long time. But about 5 years after I bought the house, I learned that there had been an artist named David Hare who lived here. People often confuse the name with an English playwright named David Hare, but this was an artist who was a sculptor and showed with the art gallery Art of this Century, which was run by Peggy Guggenheim in New York City. When I first uncovered that, I couldn't believe it. It was one, I hadn't heard of this guy, and I know a lot about art history. And so I started digging and digging and digging, and ultimately found a fascinating story that was all but disappeared. I have a long relationship with historic preservation going back probably to my high school years. And so having an antique house was really a dream come true. And as I uncovered this remarkable history of the house going back to 1840, but really this surrealist history from 1940 to 1950 and beyond, continued to do my research and found that there had been a history that had not really been revealed. Once I uncovered all of that, I got in contact with Preservation Connecticut, and with their assistance, we just recently got listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, based more on its cultural history than its architectural history. It's a perfectly charming Greek Revival farmhouse from the 19th century, but there's a lot of those in New England. But what was remarkable about this house was this rich cultural history. So now that you've seen my front parlor here, let's go into the dining room. So this table, I've sat 12 people at this table, but mostly it's 6 to 8 people. The runner that's on here is called Kuba cloth, K-U-B-A, and it's woven raffia from the country formerly known as Zaire. I love the earthiness of it and the graphic quality, and it ties in beautifully with the seagrass rug that's on the floor. The chairs are Anglo-colonial chairs. I've probably had them for 35 years, and they've served me extremely well. They've got a kind of strong graphic presence that reminds me of some of the classical elements, but also some of the rudimentary things from the African things that I own. This painting that's here is by Melinda Stickney Gibson. It's oil painting on paper. It's mysterious and deep and earthy. The chandelier in this room is something I designed for a client's breakfast room many years ago, and when they moved from their house, we were changing up their next residence, and so it came back to my house. And what the idea around this is that I wanted to design something that looked like it was from the early 20th century when electricity was a new item, where you might have used gas or you might have used electricity. And so it has lampshades on it, which gives a nice warm glow, and combined with candles on the table, it makes for a very sexy dining room. Here on this wall is a large circular work on bark cloth. It is from the island of Samoa. The thing that I like about this is it reminds me of a number of things, like in Alfred Hitchcock movies when you're having vertigo and the movie's going in and out and there's a kind of psychedelic aspect to this. I also like how it's authentically of the culture in which it came from, but I also see a kind of double read, or a third read, as it were, that it's almost like some of the things that might have been painted on the sides of barns by Amish farmers. And then, of course, it reads modern. Here's some more of my basaltware collection. And the dining room, these light fixtures that I have here are something that I designed probably 35 years ago, and they couldn't be simpler. They're just kind of a steel frame with these long bare T-bulbs that give kind of the glow of candlelight. The lamps that sit on the sideboard are something I designed over 30 years ago. These are the prototypes for a jewelry showroom. They're simple steel frames that are in a rusted finish and with these long bare T-bulbs, which the filaments kind of wiggle, and they've got, again, that sort of ye old early electricity, but there's also a kind of modern graphic presence with the form itself. Connected to the dining room is this open living room. When you come into this room, it just really presents like a sitting room. It's got corner windows that were actually probably added in 1950 or later. And you don't really see a TV. I really don't love coming into a room and sort of seeing the TV first thing. It's kind of discreetly hidden around on the wall here. We do use this room on a regular basis for watching TV, but it's also used for reading, napping, chatting with friends. The tables in here are also designed by Robs John Gibbings. You can see the classical form of the legs. It's a little bit leaner and a little bit more modern. These were probably designed for end tables, but I prefer them as a pair of coffee tables. They're a little bit higher. You don't have to bend over so much when you're grabbing your drink or your snacks or whatever. The artwork that's in here, this is gouache on paper by Donald Bachelor, and it was something I bought from an art dealer friend in the late 1980s when I first moved to New York City, and I paid him $100 a month for 7 months to get this work. What's interesting about this is that Donald Bachelor's work is always kind of these primitive elements, and so it says Donald, so we'll take it as a self-portrait. But beneath that, you can maybe sort of see it. There's something that they call pentimento, which is when an artist changes their mind and paints something over it later. And what the pentimento is in this case, it's actually his father. So there's something about the father-son relationship there, which I think is quite remarkable. This work over the fireplace is by an artist named Tom Friedman. It's actually a print. He did make one original of this, but it's actually dollar bills that have been cut up. And if you come in closely, you can sort of see George Washington's face here with a gazillion eyes and nose, and things like "In God We Trust" and all this around the bottom. But there's something simple and American about it. These elements here are from Africa. This is also from Zaire. This is a Katanga cross, which actually appears on their stamp and on their currency. And this is currency. Now, I know that sounds funny, but money is an abstraction. And so when I've done a reading about this, when there was a dowry, a woman might when she was going into another person's family, might come with a pile of blankets, a goat, a donkey, and a bunch of Katanga cross. And there was a kind of belief that there was value to these. I like to give these to my clients that work in finance because money is an abstraction, isn't it? And this is from is a ceremonial element from Africa. This here is a drawing by an artist named David Dupuy, and you'll see that there are a number of things that will that have to do with steps. He's an artist whose work I followed for quite some time. These are highly rendered on the steps. They get larger as they get to the bottom, and then there's this kind of scratchy stairs that are here. This table is I don't know, it's a library table, I guess, but this becomes I like to put table desks in living rooms and find that they become a very multifunctional space. It's a great place to pull up a laptop. Sometimes my partner and I will have dinner here, just the two of us. When we're entertaining, it might be a place where we set up a self-serve bar or hors d'oeuvres. You know, it really becomes a multifunctional element. The chairs are French 1940s. They're from a games table, but they're, you know, kind of upright armchairs, and they're quite good for working. And then the last work of art in here is this print here. This is by the artist Lucio Fontana. And one of the things that Lucio Fontana did, sometimes they talk about in theater the fourth wall, which is the wall between the actors and the audience. And in this case, what he did with paintings is he actually sliced canvases to actually pierce the picture plane. This is an edition, and probably from the 60s or 70s, but it's a print of a kind of purple lozenge-like shape, but then each of them are scored individually to scrape into the work. And again, there's a kind of minimal elegance and something that's kind of disruptive at the same time. Over here, this is I like things that are 1 foot in history and 1 foot in the times in which we live. And if you look at this table, this is actually from the 19th century. It has a kind of modern sensibility, and at the same time, it's also got a sort of antique form. So when I first bought this house, I don't think people really understood how to deal with this room. This was a dining room, but they were anxious about how it should be, and had a kind of ordinary sized table, and I decided to go bold. And I differentiated the two rooms with two matching rugs. There had been a built-in bookcase over here, a sofa with its back facing the fireplace, and it really didn't function well. There was a chair over by the corner. The colors were sort of pink and mauve and yellow, and there was an antique fireplace around, but it was ill-fitting and was not original to the house. I added the beams, and working with an architect, we developed the end wall in the living room with the fireplace. And then over here, one of the things about antique houses is that they didn't have central heating. And so somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, they added this corner window. This never would have been here, but one of the things that's great about it is that it opens up to this side yard, which is now a kind of open meadow. And we'll see when we go outside, there's this classical urn that sits in a sea of pachysandra. When I learned of this history of David Hare's existence here, I learned that there was dozens upon dozens of artists and writers, photographers, poets that came to this house. And in a way, my values are consistent with that. It's a place that I think of as the more the merrier. If somebody wants to bring a guest or bring a dog or bring a friend or bring a parent, or, I just bring it on. And the house is really at its best when there's a lot of people in it. The collection of art that I have in the house is focused on a lot of the artists who came to visit, Surrealists from the 1940s and 50s, along with contemporary art that I've collected over my adult life. And the house has both its classical underpinnings because of its antique Greek Revival bones, but also has a kind of avant-garde bohemian lifestyle that I wanted to also make room for. This house is a kind of ongoing laboratory of objects in space. I'm always rearranging, moving artwork from one place to another, adding artwork, moving other artwork into storage, editing, and it's all to keep my mind engaged with the things that I have and to tell a particular story. Once I discovered the surrealist history of this house, it became part of my mission to, as I gained more and more knowledge, was to tell the story of this house and the artists that were here. So I've focused my collecting on a lot of things, artwork by artists of that period, including Joan Miro and Dorothea Tanning and Max Ernst and Roberto Matta. Most of the things are not valuable paintings. They're prints, editions that are from that era, but for me, they hold the meaning of what those artists were doing in the 1940s. So now I want to take you into the rustic room. It's really kind of a mystery room. We're going to come this way. There's this curtain, which is an incredible antique Cezanne that hangs in front of the door. Behind the curtain is a door that goes into the rustic room. So follow me. This room, it's post and beam in terms of the construction. There's a fireplace here that a local fireplace specialist told me all the bricks are handmade, which has it be dated to an earlier time. And if you see these hand-hewn beams that are here, they really would have probably been set across at this point. Now, I'm not that tall, but people were shorter then. And so there's a notion that this would have been the living room where the eating and cooking and all of that would have been done. And then upstairs would have been a kind of attic-like space with a central chimney going through to heat that upper level. When I first came to the house, I wasn't sure what to do with this room. Eventually it's become, we'll call it the rustic room. And I brought in another sectional sofa in here, and it's really great in the winter with with this huge open fireplace with a big fire in here and drinks and snacks. I guess there's a lot of drinking and snacking that happens in this house. Some of the things that are in here worth noting, this is a 19th century stair model. This would have been something that someone that built stairs would have shown to potential clients about the way a stair would be built. I just love the curiosity and the mystery of it. Over here, this is my cat, Cuba. Cuba is named after the African cloth because of her markings. She's a dear of a cat. Hi, say hello. So this is a very relaxed room. I guess, it has a kind of bohemian vibe in here. Over here on this wall, this is I found this, I think, on eBay, and it looked like it might have been something that came from Africa, but what it is it's a sign that would be hung on your at the front of your house, probably with something down here saying honey. And what it is it's kind of made out of grass, but it's a beehive. And so it's mixed here with a couple of other things, some of which are American, some of which are African, all with a kind of hand-wrought quality to them. In the early 1940s, David Hare married a woman named Jacqueline Lamba. We'll see later his studio out in the back, and she used this room as her studio. And over here, you can see this, which is a simple kind of desk-like space. This would have been her drawing table, and this was her art studio. On the back side of this building is an open woodshed, and there's a door that's up there on the wall, which goes into an attic space that's over the proverbial woodshed. When I first moved into the house, I put a bed out here, and it only got used in the summertime because the room is not so warm. And so when I got a new sectional for the living room, I thought, let me just give it a try back here. And So, the room can accommodate, I've probably had 8 people here with a big fire and drinks spread out here. And people are always sort of amazed when they see this room because they think they've seen the finished part of the house. And you'll see that we walk through this kind of curtain, which is an antique Suzanne that brings you into this room. It's sort of a hidden room. The light fixture that's in here is really coming out of the Akari light fixtures that Isamo Noguchi created to help a community in Japan after the war. So it's a giant paper shade, and it gives a kind of, and those things were in the 40s and the 50s, and so it gives a kind of retro bohemian quality, but also gives a nice quality of light in the room. Let me take you outside so you can see the side yard. This amazing classical urn came with the house. I guess it's too big to move, and I'm really grateful that I've got it. This area here, which is a sea of pachysandra, I discovered that underneath it was a red brick herringbone patio, but the pachysandra took over, and now it's just going to remain pachysandra. And it's raised up and overlooks this meadow area, which we've let go just wild. And then back over there on the side yard, there's a hammock that sits under the tree. And this is probably a 100-year-old sugar maple. You're seeing it now at the end of the season with very few leaves left on it, but it's a magnificent, magnificent tree. I've collected things for a very long time, whether it's furniture, artwork, objects, friends, and I tend to keep things for a long period of time in all that category. So some of the artwork that I have a painting in the living room. It's a gouache on paper that I bought 40 years ago, and it was the first work of art I bought in New York, and I paid $100 a month until I paid off the $700. It's very important to me because it was at a point when I was just moving to New York, and the fact that I could have real artwork in my home always made a huge difference to me. While the house has 4 bedrooms, 3 of which are sort of smallish, and it's not that big, it's like 2,300 square feet, but somehow the way in which it's been built, it rambles a bit. And this step down into the rustic room is really part of that. Now what I'd like to do is take you into a little room that I call the research lab. So come with me. I heard from some people that grew up here that their mother had used this as a sewing room. I wasn't sure exactly what to do with it, but as I started getting down the path of doing research on the history of the house, it became the repository and really my research lab. What you see here is, I've probably got about 7.5 feet of books about the various people and artists that came through this house. It started with the artist David Hare, and this is a catalog from an exhibition. And this sculpture that's on the front of the catalog, we'll see in the studio later, was actually made out in the studio building. And this is a catalog of his works going into the 70s. At some point, he had a one-person show at the Guggenheim Museum. And then this is his second wife named Jacqueline Lamba, who is a French artist. So it's a really kind of amazing and somewhat complex story, but I'll try and give you the abbreviated version of it. So David Hare grew up from on Long Island in a fairly well-to-do family, and early on he got married to another well-to-do family, and they were married at the Metropolitan Club. Her mother, I think, was in the administration of FDR. They were involved in the arts, but at a certain point, David Hare fell for Jacqueline Lamba. Jacqueline Lamba was escaping Europe because of the oppression of the approaching war from the Germans, and she came here with her husband, André Breton, who's the elder statesman, really, of Surrealism in France. There's a photograph of them here standing at the front door with their daughter Aube, who's now, I think, 87, living in the south of France, and a woman named Dolores Vanetti, and Dolores Vanetti's young husband, a handsome young doctor. David Hare built the studio in around 1940 and worked out in the back. Eventually, when he married Jacqueline Lamba, she moved in, and took over the rustic room as the studio. And some of the photos I've got here are from this legacy. As it started to reveal itself, I really couldn't believe how it interfaced with history. So one of the things that happened is that Andre Breton and Jacqueline Lamba went to Mexico to visit Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, where she interfaced with Leon Trotsky. There, artists of that era, like artists of this era, were more forward-thinking, and the boundaries between propriety and not were dissolved. And as documented in a book here called The Militant Muse, this is Jacqueline Lamba and Frida Kahlo, and apparently when Jacqueline spent about a year there, and they were an item. Now, 1940 was a long time ago, so that would have been a pretty edgy thing. And they continued to be friends for a long time. Nearby, David Hare's cousin, whose name was Kay Sage, a female artist who I'd never really heard of before, but she was married to a French surrealist named Yves Tanguy. Well, they too left Europe to come to the United States, and they lived about 10 miles away. And there's a photograph here of Yves Tanguy, Kay Sage, Maria Martins, who was Marcel Duchamp's girlfriend, Marcel Duchamp, Enrico Donati, and Frederick Kiesler. And Frederick Kiesler was an Austrian architect who designed Peggy Guggenheim's gallery, Art of the Century. As time went on, both Jacqueline and David Hare, they were very open with their house, I guess in a similar way that I am. And I started to understand how many people that are bold-faced names in modern art history came through this house. And it includes Joan Miro, Marcel Duchamp, Jackson Pollock, Robert Motherwell, Roberto Matta, William Baziodes, Jimmy Ernst, Philip Guston, Andre Masson, Stanley William Hayter, Walt Kuhn, Max Ernst and Dorothea Tanning. And so what I've got here on this wall is pictures of the people that came to visit this house. And so I think it was probably a simple house, but it was an open house and people liked to come here. At one point in January 1945, David and Jacqueline, I think, went to Arizona for 9 months. And during that time period, they loaned the house to Arshil Gorky. When I first found this out, I couldn't believe it. I said, this is crazy. And so Arshil Gorky lived in this house for 9 months, from January to September 1945. And many of the, there are many books on Arshil Gorky, and I've been able to trace artworks that would have been created out in the studio building. The other thing that's of interest is that, and maybe one of the reasons why people came to this area in particular, because it was pretty rural. At the time, Roxbury had only 800 people, and it's the size of Manhattan. Today, there's 2,200 people in Roxbury, so it's really a bustling metropolis compared to the 1940s. But in the same footprint, there's 1.6 million people living in Manhattan. So this is a book on Calder at Home, and there's quite a few images of his home and studio, which is about 1.5 miles from here. And he became a very good friend with Jacqueline and David Hare. And this was before he became a big deal and started doing big corporate sculptures and things like that. He was living quite modestly, and his studio was really kind of utter chaos. It actually, when I saw pictures of his studio, I started to admire him much more as an artist. There's a picture of Alexander Calder sitting at a picnic table on the side yard, which I will show to you. This is a book that was on Yves Tanguy and Calder. It's called Between Surrealism and Abstraction. And when Peggy Guggenheim opened her gallery, she had One side was for surrealism and the other side was for abstraction. And she wore one earring by Alexander Calder and one earring by Yves Tanguy to show her impartiality between surrealism and abstraction. And so this book is showing some of the correlations between their work at that time. So it's really been a remarkable adventure to revisit art history through the filter of this particular 10-year period. The plot continues to thicken. So one of the things that became a surprise for me, I knew that the epicenter of the art world in the early 20th century was Paris, and then later it was New York. And it was never really clearly explained to me what happened, but then it became super clear to me. It was the war. And so what happened during the Second World War is a lot of surrealists came to America. In fact, here's a book called Surrealism in Exile. And, it includes Max Ernst and Andre Breton and a whole list of other people. They were trying to, they were considered deviants and they were escaping the oppression from Europe. When Andre Breton came to America, he started a magazine called VVV, which I'd never heard of before. And I know a fair amount about art history. So VVV, I'm not sure if it stands for Viva 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 or whatever, but the first issue was in 1942, and the editor was David Hare, the artist who lived here, and the editorial advisors were Andre Breton and Max Ernst. And later, Marcel Duchamp became one of the editorial advisors. Now, the artists that were here in exile could not work. They couldn't work to be paid. So David Hare was kind of he could translate things into English. And so there were only a few issues of this magazine, but they're very, it was done in black and white, but there's some very avant-garde printing techniques. There's, these things that were added into the magazine. Some of the illustrations were commissioned. Some of them were in color. Some of them were not. And then you can see in the last issue, which is 1944, there's a kind of big mouth on the front with the VVV kind of hidden in the back. And there's ads in here for Primitive Art, Paul Klee, Elsa Schiaparelli, Julien Levy Gallery, Pierre Matisse Gallery, and various other things that were in the magazine. It was really quite extraordinary. So I felt that because it had been edited by David Hare, I needed to have them here in the house. There are so many layers to avenues of art history that went on in this house. One of them is this art dealer named Julien Levy. And Julien Levy was a big enough deal in terms of art history that they made a 4-volume edition for an art dealer, not an artist, not a catalog raisonné for an artist, but a 4-volume book on all the important exhibitions that he had done. And he was friends with David Hare and at this house, and good friends with Arshile Gorky. And so it was really kind of a small creative community. Now, I will tell you that people that know about art history, when I tell them the story, their eyes bug out of their head. They can't believe, like, how did I end up with this house? And how did I unearth this incredible history that was here? And how serendipitous it is. And they're in awe. And then there's other people who don't really have a relationship to art history, and as I'm talking to them, their eyes sort of glaze over, and they like the house and everything, but the history about the house and surrealism doesn't really have a lot of meaning for them. But for me, it's deep and profound. And just recently, I was able to get the house listed on the National Register of Historic Places because of its cultural history than for the architecture per se. I worked with Preservation Connecticut. There was about a 70-page application, and it was recognized as having cultural importance. And so I don't have my plaque yet. It's soon to be here, but I'm quite proud and happy to have had the house designated that way. Roxbury, Connecticut is a place where creative people have come for really kind of an escape. Alexander Calder is one of the creative people that lived in Roxbury, going back to the late 30s, early 40s. But the single most famous person to ever have lived in Roxbury is Marilyn Monroe when she was married to Arthur Miller. It was a short period of time, but she had at that point imagined having a kind of regular home life with, flowers in the garden and just a simple domestic life. It didn't really last so long, but she did live here, and it's really kind of legendary. Some of the other people that have lived in Roxbury have included the actor Richard Widmark, Walter Matthau, the Rebecca Miller, Arthur Miller's daughter, and her husband Daniel Day-Lewis, the writer Candace Bushnell, who wrote Sex and the City, William Styron, who wrote The Confessions of Nat Turner, Stephen Sondheim, Debbie Harry, and current residents include Gay Talese, the writer, and Graydon Carter, the former and legendary editor of Vanity Fair. Enough about art history. Let's go into the kitchen and see what goes on there. So this was probably the original kitchen, and I think where the refrigerator is, believe it or not, in this sort of modest scale house, there was a back stair that came down there. So if that was circulation and all these doors, I don't know how they actually had room for appliances, but this was the kitchen. I learned that in the original house, there was a stair that came right down here and it would have a small little back stair. The house isn't that big, but there was a back stair that came down here. So with this being circulation, I don't know where they put all the appliances, but it's not a big kitchen, but it's very efficient. And we do a lot of, as I mentioned before, we do a lot of entertaining. And I don't like to serve family style. I prefer to serve things plated. And so we lay out all the plates and serve it up and then serve it into our guests. Now, a lot of people would use a pantry. The pantry was here. A lot of people would use a pantry to store food, but because we do so much entertaining, it's really more about the dishes and serving pieces that we need to make for a great dinner party. The artwork in this room, this is a original work by Alfred Jensen from the early 1960s. Alfred Jensen created a kind of whole cosmology of the order of the universe that had something to do with mathematics, and I couldn't really explain it to you. But this is a kind of study piece that he did. Over here is this is a 19th century game board that has its own numbers and grid similar to the Alfred Jensen. And this is, I've mounted it on the wall, and this would have been where the games pieces are. And this sits here. And then there's another Alfred Jensen print that's on the wall. On this wall over here, I call it my 19th century Donald Judd. And for people that know art, they look at me and they look a little cross-eyed, and they can't quite figure it out because Donald Judd didn't start making his works until the 1960s. So this, in fact, would have been a carpenter-made small shelf. Maybe it was for herbs or I'm not sure what, but there's a certain kind of modern graphic quality through a kind of rustic point of view that I love with that work. The breakfast room was added probably in the 60s or the 70s, and it steps down, and there's a banquette here, and sometimes we have 4 or 5 people here. And the most extraordinary thing, well, we've got this monstera. It keeps getting bigger and bigger, and these are the air roots. Now I keep the air roots kind of like bangs. I keep them clipped so that they don't quite hit the floor. So it's got its own kind of graphic quality. And then there's this light fixture. During COVID, the senior designer in my office found this on, I think it was on eBay, and I ordered it. It's from Czechoslovakia. It's from the 70s. It's this incredible blown glass with this kind of brawny metal work to it, and it came, and it was in one piece. It didn't break. It's an odd thing. It's a bit, I guess, a lantern-like, but it makes a statement quietly. So let's go upstairs and I'll show you a couple of the bedrooms. This is the landing. What's worth noting here is this is an artwork from the early 1970s by David Hare. This is an arts and crafts table that I got at a yard sale, and I'm not sure what this crazy vase is, but I found this vine out on the property, and somehow it sort of makes a thing here going on. There's another cotton rug in here, and this is another rug that I designed. And you can see that the palette in here is kind of, I've got a warm white, almost to yellow on the walls, and kind of a green-gray that kind of wraps through the whole house. Let's go in here. This is the primary bedroom. It's an unusual space. I think the ceilings are less than 7 feet, maybe they're 7 feet, and it's sort of like a tent. The walls start at, I guess, around 5 feet. And normally when you hang artwork, it's hung at sort of 5 feet, 60 inches to the center. This room came with this antique toile wallpaper already on the wall, which wasn't really the thing that I would imagine putting in here, but I kept it. People would come in and they go, this is so great. And I, tried to make sense of it and tried to make sense of it. And then as I started going down this path of surrealism, I found some inspiration from Peggy Guggenheim. In her gallery, Art of this Century, she had one gallery that was devoted to surrealism. And the artwork was projected from the walls on curved walls, and there was a lot of it of various sizes. And so what I did is I took that idea and hung artwork basically at the eye level of when you're in bed. So there's, I don't know how many works are in here, 30, 40, something like that. Some of them are surrealist works from the period. This is André Masson, and this is Hans Bellmer. These works down here, this is by Jacqueline Lamba and David Hare. But it's also combined with more contemporary things. This is a print by Richard Tuttle, and this is a drawing by Leon Golub. Like those windows that we saw downstairs, these must have been added in the around the same time. They're curious casement-style windows that open out, and it looks out into the side yard, into that giant sugar maple that I showed you before. Over the bed, this is an abstract work by Jean Dubuffet from 1958. There's another experimental photograph over here by David Hare. Down here, he did a lot of manipulations in the darkroom. This is by Alphonse Osorio, who was very good friends with Jackson Pollock. And this is by André Masson, who lived in New Preston. This is from the Guggen Institute, which is an institute that started in the 1920s for neurodivergent artists. The furniture in here, like downstairs, this is also Rob's John Gibbings. This is in blonde wood, and you can see, again, those tapered columns, and so too is this Klismo stool. Even in the winter, we tend to turn the heat very low and open up the windows to look out into the tree, and it's like being in a tree house. Over here, there's an artwork by Feliciano Behar. It's a little bit like the center of the dollar bill that we saw in the living room. He used automobile parts for the framework and then took ground glass and created these kind of specular glass elements that abstract things in the world. This is another work by André Masson. This is a press photo of an explosion in space, and this is by Dorothea Tanning. She was ultimately married to Max Ernst, someone I met some 20 years ago. And so you can see that there's a lot of information in here, but it's a very calming space and really spectacular for sleeping. Let's go into the other bedroom. I want to do a little stop in the hallway to show you a few other works of art. This is a small work on paper by Roberto Matta. And this is a much larger print, and this is a print by Maria Martens, who I mentioned before was Marcel Duchamp's girlfriend. And so let's go into this second bedroom. This is really the primary guest room. This room might be the most colonial of all, I guess. There's a kind of almost like a colonial blue as the trim work in here. And since guests I found really tend not to unpack. So one of the things I did in here is I put shaker pegs around the room on the wall so that they, hang up their clothes with these very cool antique hangers, or their pool towels, or their clothes, or their bag. There's, I try and make it as easy as possible. There's a couple of luggage racks, but then there's a few elements of interest that are in here. This work on paper from 1953 is by the French architect Le Corbusier, which has some of that Picassoid abstraction of a figure. This is a 17th century English bureau that I like because of the kind of architecture of it. This is an anonymous work in a tramp art frame that shows a it's generally you don't leave the center of a work of art to be empty. And what's interesting, it's a pond view or a stream view, and it's empty in the middle. It's kind of abstract looking. And then over here, this is an artwork by my friend Nancy Spiro. And then there, of course, there's the four-post bed, which is, I guess, a traditional element. And then this curious little piece of architecture is actually a sewing box, and that these elements here would be for spools of thread, and you would keep your needles and things in here. But I just love the architecture of it. Saturday nights are the main event here. We tend to come up on Friday nights. Saturday we do our local shopping with Green Market and local farms. I love to plan ways to include friends and family in the house. So oftentimes I'll have people coming up for the weekend weeks and sometimes months in advance because coordinating people's schedules. When I went shopping for a house, I really didn't have an agenda on the number of bedrooms, but they're not big rooms, particularly big bedrooms, but I've got 4 bedrooms in the house, and at one point there was a 5th room. So at one point I had 5 beds in the house, and so there were times where the house was very full, the table was very full, the pool was full, and it made for joyful weekends. A typical evening on Saturday starts at 6:30 or 7 for drinks, and then there's snacks, and then ultimately we end up sitting at the table for hours, eating, drinking, laughing, and just acting ridiculous. I think this coming weekend we're going to have 8 people for dinner. I have a guest who's coming who loves to cook, and he's already planning the meal. And so I'm gathering friends to fill up the table and have a fun evening. So now we're in the backyard, and I have to tell you, the backyard is really big. The property is more than 8 acres. It's very wide and extremely deep. And one of the things that came with the house was a swimming pool, this building out here, which we'll visit, and 2 other small barns here. I can't believe that all this came with this super cool house. I never imagined that I would have a swimming pool. It just wasn't on my list of things that I thought I would have. But lo and behold, I end up with a swimming pool. It's late in the season. I just don't like to close it up. It looks so beautiful the way it reflects the colors from the trees, and so here we are. I mean, it's kind of a cement pond, like the Beverly Hillbillies. I really don't like having a big patio around it. I did put a patio for some chaises over there, but I love it being almost like a reflecting pool. I've got gates that face the house, and then out to the back, I've got 4 sets of gates, and it just keeps the whole area very open. I'm set up with 6 chaises here, and they look across to what had been David Hare's studio. Over time, it's really become called the Pleasure Pavilion. I probably should call it the studio, but we call it the Pleasure Pavilion, and now everybody just calls it the Pleasure Pavilion. When I first came to see the house, the realtors, I said, "What is that building?" And she said, "Oh, it's a wood shop." There was like 15 inches of snow on the ground when I came to look at the house, and the realtor couldn't be bothered to come out to see the building. So I came out here with my daughter, and when we go inside, you'll see it's a spectacular space. When I saw the house, it was winter, so there were no leaves on any of the trees. And then when I closed on the house and came back in May, I couldn't see the forest for the trees. Where this fence is, which is a fence that I put in, was where the beginning of the forest was, and you couldn't see anything. And so over the more than 10 years I've been here, I've taken down many trees to kind of open it up and have it feel more like it's agrarian. So let's go take a look at the Pleasure Pavilion. So this building was built probably around 1940 by David Hare for himself. I think at that time he was doing photography, and then shortly thereafter started doing sculpture. It didn't quite look like this. The building was here, but I've since added a lot of windows and doors to open it up to the outside. And I guess once you get inside, you'll see why it's no longer called just a studio. So let's go in and take a look. So this had been built by David Hare as his studio. There was a big window here that faced really to the east, not the normal to the north as many artists do. And this was the end of the room where he sort of did his primary work. That end of the building was kind of a dark room and a bathroom. And I've opened up the whole thing. It was I rebuilt the roof and added a lot of windows in here. And it's now set up for whatever floats your boat. I think this weekend we're going to have a dinner party for 8 out here. I think the ceilings in here go up to like 16 feet, and it's 600 square feet of just open space. So aside from this big 60-inch round, this could also be additional sleeping. This is essentially two twin beds that are put together, and this looks out to the woods in the back. This is an abstract painting. I don't really know. It's someone, W.K. Chow from 1964, but it helps give the notion of the artist studio in here. And then over here, this is another reproduction of a work that I know to have been made in this building by Arshil Gorky. And this is, I think, called Good Hope Road 1. And I believe it's in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. This chair over here is a carved wood Syrian chair. And this is this kind of dramatic, sawtooth lamp. I look forward to having some fall parties in here for drinks, and maybe I can get my friends to dance. I like to do a lot of candlelight out here, but it's a magnificent space. And then behind the screen, I'll show you, it's a gym. So not too fancy, but there's a lot of free weights and a BOSU and an exercise ball and various other things. And so it becomes a multi-use space. We have done yoga classes out here. I could set up for theater, so I'm looking to expand further the opportunities in the Pleasure Pavilion. When I first moved to New York 40 years ago, I moved into the center of Soho, Spring Street and West Broadway, at a time when it was the epicenter of contemporary art. And even at that point, my fascination with New York City, I still was dreaming of a place outside the city so that I could go barefoot in the grass. I'm not, it wasn't something that I grew up with. I grew up in a suburb, but there was something about having the yin to the yang or whatever that seemed very appealing. It took a very long time, more than 30 years for me to get this property, but I had the aspiration of finding a balance to urban living. I've always lived in historic districts, curiously enough. When I first moved to New York, I was in Soho, then I lived in the Village, and then I've been living in Brooklyn Heights, which in fact is the first historic district in the city of New York. And given my interest in historic preservation, finding an antique house was really something special. And so getting this listing on this house with the National Registry of Historic Places marks my territory as in this historic house. What you don't get in the city is moments of real repose and noticing the changing of the light. We're here in sort of early autumn, but the property and the house are beautiful all year round. And I do come up probably 49 of 52 weeks of the year. I do come up to the house, and it's always beautiful. It's different, but it's always beautiful. And in that way, it's kind of like the wind can blow through your brain in a different way, and it gives you some objectivity on the life in the city.
Homeworthy, thanks for coming to see my antique house in Roxbury, Connecticut. I've really enjoyed sharing it with you, but now it's time for you guys to go. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Hi, Homeworthy. It's JR in St. Louis. Welcome to my home. Let me show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm JR Whiter. I'm a project manager at Purina and also a content creator. Welcome to my home. So we found this home when we weren't even looking to move. My husband John and I were in a house in a neighborhood called Pasadena Hills, and we were actually out to lunch with my mom, and John saw the open house, and so the three of us stopped by. The owner opened the door, and my mom actually knew who she was just from my grade school growing up. And so she and the owner got to talking, and then John and I walked around the house. We just fell in love with the house, and it's perfect for us. It's a 1920s farmhouse. The records say 1920, but I think it might be a little older because some of the neighbors have said that it was one of the only houses in the area when this neighborhood was a lot of farmland. So that's kind of how we found it, and it's just been perfect for us and a fun project to work on. So the style of our house is more traditional. So some things are found from antique malls, but then also some things are new that we find at a regular furniture store. I am not a professionally trained interior designer. I do like a classic style home, but you don't have to have a big budget or a formal training just to have a beautiful home. I like to go to a lot of the estate sales and antique stores around town. I like to live my life. If you find something that you love for your house, you should buy it because you can always find a spot for it. Welcome to the entry to our home. And this is a really cool room because we completely redid it when we first moved in. When we first moved in, it was wallpaper that we had taken down, and then our wallpaper guy actually just painted. And the cool thing about this, the black trim is just ribbon that he put up with wallpaper glue. And it's cool because it kind of looks like a little box, which is fun. And then I also collect some walking sticks. So I have a umbrella holder, and every time I see a cool walking stick when I'm out at the antique stores or in an estate sale, I will pick one up. And so it just adds a little kind of flair to the space. And then I also found this table at an estate sale that I had a wood refinisher refinish. And then this gold mirror, this was actually one of my first finds in a store in town, and I kind of fell in love with it, and it's perfect for the space. So the color on the wall is orange. We actually found a inspiration pic on, I believe it was Martha Stewart's blog, and John and I kind of fell in love with it. And when people come in, they kind of think it looks like an Hermes box, which I agree. And orange is a hard color to pick. But for some reason, the black and orange, they just go really, really well together. And it's really cool. It's, like I said earlier, it looks like a little kind of gift box. A lot of the prints around the house will reference St. Louis. So this is just an etching of the riverfront on the Mississippi, since St. Louis is on the Mississippi and there was a lot of steamboats that came by. So you'll see throughout the house, there are some steamboats and also different pictures of St. Louis. And then the rug, we actually just found this at an estate sale. I believe it's just a Persian rug, and it kind of works really well in this space. It's a smaller entryway, but I like it a lot. People always kind of laugh at me that I keep my sunglasses in a silver tray on the table, but it's just easy access for when I'm running out the door. I can grab my keys and a pair of sunglasses for the day. And now we're going to show you the living room. We do entertain in here a lot. It is a nice sized room. So a lot of people can fit in here. And if we have people over for dinner or party, a lot of people just end up here since it is a centrally located room, and it is a larger room with about 5 built-in bookcases. So when we first moved in, those are one of the first things that we noticed is all of the woodwork. So we tried to keep it as original as possible, but then also 5 bookcases is a lot to fill. So they sat empty for a while just because we didn't want to fill it with stuff that we really didn't like. So over time, we went to antique stores or estate sales, and anything that was cool or a set of leather-bound books, we picked it up, and slowly we started to build the bookcases. And a lot of the stuff comes from some of our travels. John and I have been on a number of really amazing trips, so we will usually get something that's kind of unique or cool from our travels and put it in the bookcase. My favorite bookcase in the living room is this one right here. And my favorite thing on the bookcase are these little lead soldiers that I found at an estate sale. So they're pretty heavy and they're hand painted. And then I also have another set on the other side. Also, we found this print at an estate sale that we had framed, and it kind of goes with lead soldiers. So another cool thing that I have in the bookcase, my dad went to Europe when he was 16. He went on a solo trip to Europe with a group of his friends from high school, and that is one of the things that he picked up. It's just a wood carved bust of it looks like a cowboy or a farmer. So it's something just to remember my dad by. So not all the stuff that we have are from antique stores or estate sales. So this was a Christmas present from my mom. I believe she got it from Wayfair. And it's just a mirrored table that works really well. And I have a couple of blue and white urns on it, but we usually get a Charlie Brown tree for Christmas and put it on this table. And one year it was too heavy and it actually cracked the top of the mirrored table. So I have yet to have it fixed. And then these stools I found online that I had recovered just in a velvet. And they're great because when people are in here, there is a lot of seating, but sometimes we need more. So we could always just pull a stool. And then this is cool. This was actually one of the first pieces that I bought when I started to collect. It is a dressing table. So the top actually opens up, and then there is a mirror that actually pulls out from the top or from the back. So it's kind of cool to think about who was sitting here throughout history just to get ready for their day. At my old house, I believe we used it as a bar. So, but it works. It needs to be refinished. There are some nicks in it, but I think it kind of adds to the character of the piece. We found these at an estate sale. Estate sales are great because you can find a lot of really unique pieces and for not a lot of money, which is awesome because framing can be very expensive. So if I fall in love with the print and I like the frame, I will usually get it because you can get it for about, I don't know, 40 or 50 bucks. And then if you just frame it, it could be a couple $100 just to frame a print. So the couch is new. We found it at a store in town, and it was great because you got to pick the shell of the couch and then just pick the fabric and then the piping. And people always comment, oh man, it's kind of bold to have a white couch. Throughout the years, some people have spilled on our seating during the parties, but we found a great company that will seal your fabric. So if you do spill something on it, it will just kind of run right off and not stain, which is awesome. And then these chairs, we did have these recovered. So they were in a green leather, but unfortunately the leather was ripped over a lot of it. So we just found this cool chinoiserie print or fabric that we had recovered. And then the coffee table, I believe we found it on Facebook Marketplace, and then we just painted it gold. So it kind of works. We were looking for a 2-tiered glass coffee table, and it's great because you can display some decorative books, or I also found these silver birds, which are great. They're hammered silver. I like it because the set were 2 males instead of a male and a female, and it kind of works for me and John since we're 2 males. And then also in this space, I really like this drum table just because I find drum tables really interesting. And then one of my favorite pieces in the living room is this Asian painting. So we found this at a store in town called Cool Stuff Period. And it works with all of the other Asian motif in the room. And it's cool because it is just a painting stretched over a piece of wood. And it just really works over the couch since it's a pretty large painting. So here's another built-in, and this is also one of my favorites just because it is a little more bright and with other cool stuff. And one of the cool things right here are a set of silver cream and sugars that my sister gave me for a housewarming present for this house. And my last name starts with a W, so the engraving of the W kind of stuck. The jockey is from the 21 Club in New York, and then just a set of leather-bound books that I found. And just whenever I find a piece of brass, I will usually pick it up depending on the weight. So yeah, it's just all these different knickknacks. Here's my high school picture when I was 17, and then when John and I got married. We just went to the courthouse, which is perfect. I really like this mirror. It's just a different gold mirror. And this actually was a gift from John's mother, which is nice. So it's kind of just nice to have pieces from different family members. So a lot of the rugs, we find them at an estate sale if we find a cool Persian rug. But there is a store in town called Asadorian Rugs, and they have really awesome rugs. So it's kind of fun to go through their store and have them flip their rugs over, but they can be very costly. So if we find one that is a good deal, we will usually pick it up. What's great about this room, it is large, and kind of we divided it up into 3 sections. So this is just another seating area. And this secretary was found at an estate sale. So this was actually the very first piece that I bought. I think I was 23, and I got a good deal on it, and it kind of just works. I mean, it does open up with some more storage in it. But it's kind of one of my favorite things since it was the first piece that I bought. And then just more bookcases, so more family pictures, our wedding invitation that was framed. And then we found the 2 doorstops, they are brass. We found them at an estate sale. They were selling them individually, but I asked if they could give us a price so we could keep them together because I didn't want to split them up. So they're just really cool doorstops. This is the dining room, and it's one of my favorite rooms in the house. When we moved in, there was green bee wallpaper and a can lighting, so we completely redid this. So John found this wallpaper. We had new curtains made. Those came from a fabric company in town, actually in Chesterfield. And funny enough, this table came from a friend of ours that was getting a new dining room table, and we were in the need of a dining room table, so we offered to take it from them. And then we just recovered the chairs. And then the piping on the chairs is actually the same fabric from the curtain, so it kind of matches. And then we actually got these at Ballard Design, which is nice. So kind of mixing old and new together. And my favorite thing about this room is when we do have a dinner party, it kind of feels like you're eating outside just because of the wallpaper. And then there is a china cabinet on this wall, which is nice because it's kind of nice to display some of the china that we got from our wedding. This mirror is actually a relatively new addition to the room. So we found this at a store in town, and they said that the 13 different balls around the circle, they represent the 13 colonies. So I really don't know the year of it, but he said it was pretty old. This buffet, I found this at a store, and unfortunately at my old house, I didn't have a trivet on it, and I put something hot on it and it scorched the top, but over the years I've been trying to polish it out. The chandelier is not original. There was a can light right above it, and so we found this at a store in town called John Paul, which is unfortunately not open anymore. And it worked well because it is black and gold, and it also kind of mirrored the black part of the wallpaper. When we do have a dinner party, we will usually start out in the living room and then move into the dining room. I am more of a casual entertainer. Sometimes I'll do a full tablescape, but usually I'll just do placemats in a flower arrangement. But yeah, one of my favorite things about this house is having people over. And after dinner, people will usually sit around the table and just talk and continue the conversation and have a good time. Let me show you the kitchen. So I am one of 5. I grew up in a big family, and my mom is a great cook. So I learned my love of cooking from her, and a lot of the recipes are family recipes. But then growing up in high school and in college, my neighbor had a catering company. So I learned a lot of tricks and recipes from doing catering just for extra money while I was going through school. So I started cooking videos about 2.5 years ago, and John and I were discussing what I could do with my passion for cooking and entertaining. So it was actually John's idea to start the cooking videos, and one weekend I made a antipasta platter and posted it on Instagram, and people seemed to like it. We've committed to doing one video a week, which has been nice. So I just do a lot of family recipes or recipes that come from friends or that I hear from word of mouth. And the response has been great. It's been nice because I've been learning more about myself and just kind of seeing what people think. And also it's been great to have people kind of take to me and my content, because the person I put out into the world is who I am in real life. I don't have an online persona or anything. All right. So this is the kitchen where I film a lot of my videos, and one thing that kind of drew me to this kitchen was this built-in buffet. So for a dinner party, I will put the food here so people can help themselves, which is nice because I am a casual entertainer. And these cigar labels actually came from my great-grandfather. He had a cigar box manufacturer. So my mom gave me a set of these, and we just had them framed. So later on in the tour, I will show you them in the bar. So it's kind of nice because I like a kitchen to feel more of a room instead of a utilitarian room. So that's what I'm trying to do, is kind of blend to where people want to hang out in the kitchen, and usually people end up in the kitchen at a party or at a dinner party. This stainless steel table was actually left by the previous owners, which is awesome because there is no island in here. You could put one in, but having this table is nice because you can move it around, and I film all of my videos just on this table. My favorite thing about the kitchen is the sink because it looks over the backyard. So even if you are doing dishes, you get to have a nice view, which is nice. All the cabinets were here, and it's nice that they're white. I mean, if we ever did redo it, I don't know if I would do it the exact same way, but for a kitchen just to move in, it's been great. Another cool thing is at our old house, we had the opportunity to completely gut and redo our kitchen and butler's pantry. So we completely redid it, and then about 6 months later, we found this house. But one cool thing that we took from the old house is our old counters were butcher block, and this was actually the sink cutout. So I just took it with me, and it's an awesome heavy cutting board. This range is awesome because it is a 6-burner range, and this is where I just do a lot of the cooking. And one thing that I do like about this kitchen, I learned this trick from my 4th grade teacher, Sheila Wiley. She had us make a jar in 4th grade and put the clippings of our Christmas tree in. So that, for some reason, that kind of stuck with me. So when I met John and we spent our first Christmas together, I started that tradition. So these 2 jars represent 15 years of Christmases together. And if you ever want to smell Christmas in a jar, they're great because it just smells like a Christmas tree. Here is another bookcase, which is awesome because there are a lot of bookcases. So this is where I store a lot of the cookbooks and whatnot. You can see I do like old copper. So there is a oil pitcher, a bowl, and then down here there is a big tub that I use for a cooler for parties. But one thing is great for my cooking videos. I pull a lot of the recipes from a cookbook that my mom gave me when I got married. She gives one of these to each of my siblings when we got married. It's a handwritten cookbook with the recipes that we had growing up and kind of the stories behind them. So this is where I pull a lot of the recipes from for my cooking videos. Today we're gonna make whipped feta dip. In a mixing bowl, add 12 ounces of crumbled feta. I buy it in a block just because you can crumble it yourself, and so because sometimes if it comes in a container, it'll almost look like sawdust since it's so small. 8 ounces of softened cream cheese, 1 cup of Greek yogurt, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and I usually just eyeball a lot of things. Zest of 1 lemon, and then the juice of 1 lemon, and then chop 2 tablespoons of dill, mix it together with a hand mixer. All We're going to slice half a cucumber. Half a cup of cherry tomatoes. So now we're going to assemble it. Spread the cheese on a platter. And then top with sliced cucumbers and cherry tomatoes. Drizzle with a little bit of olive oil. And I serve with pita chips. Let's give it a try. Oop. That's pretty good. You get a big hit of the feta, and the lemon is perfect, and then just a slight hint of the dill. That's really good. So yeah, this is the den, and it's a cozy room. So one of my favorite things in the den is the poker table. It is a old wood poker table that I got from my mom as a housewarming present. And what's great about it is that all the chairs are different and they are hand carved. But also what's cool about it, you can flip these over and it'll have room for your chips, a cocktail, and then also an ashtray. So for a party, I will usually put the bar on this table because this is a faux leather top, which I don't have to worry about if it gets wet. So then if we do have a bartender, they will stand behind the table and people can just kind of come up and grab a drink from the bartender. This bar was here, but we did retop it and then paint it, and a new faucet, and then just more of the cigar labels that come from my great-grandfather. And it's great to have a bar in the house because for a smaller party, I will set up a full bar here. And usually when people come over, I will hand them their first drink and then tell them after that it's kind of help yourself. It's a casual household and I entertain very casually, but it's nice just to have a bar that is set up for a party. Here is just a seating area. So all of this stuff is new. I believe we got it from West Elm, and it kind of works. It's a little more modern than all the other furniture that we have. But it's nice to sit here and watch the TV, and then there is a gas fireplace. But when we are at work, the dogs get to hang out here, and they have a nice window to look out so you can see their dog beds. And coincidentally, it kind of matches the, the fabric of the chair. That was not planned. That was just the ones that they had at the store that I liked. And then this piece we found at an estate sale. Every little thing kind of just comes together. And so this canoe was a present, and what's great about it is a model canoe, and it kind of matches the canoe print or the painting that we found at a Clayton Art Fair. I believe the artist is Curtis Baldwin. And right off the den, there is a powder room, which is nice because the only bathrooms are in the bedrooms. So there is a half bath that we completely redid when we moved in. We just put new wallpaper up and a new sink and toilet. And this mirror came from a family friend that was also moving. But right now we are looking for kind of what artwork to put on the walls. But the wallpaper is kind of cool. Now we're in the library, so it transitions off of the front hall from the orange into a green room, but we also pulled the orange into the chairs that you will see. So the green was originally here from previous owners, and we liked it so much because they said it's been here for a few owners. So we kept the green, and then we just put up grass cloth, which we had at our old house, and I really like grass cloth. It's just something that I am always drawn to. And then this chest is actually one of my favorite finds that I have. So this was at an estate sale actually up the street from our current house. And it's nice because it just works really well for the jockey prints that we found at our antique store. And then this lamp actually just came from Home Goods. So I usually try to mix something old and new in a space. The rug we actually bought from a rug dealer in town. So that is a Persian rug that we kind of fell in love with. And then the bookcases, just more bookcases filled with books. A lot of the books came from the previous owner. They were moving to a smaller space where they couldn't take all their books with them. So I believe the first 3 rows are from the previous owner. And another St. Louis reference is the steamboat. So we found that at a store called the Brass Alligator in town, and it's kind of an homage to all the steamboats that came down the Mississippi. And another cool thing about this that are in a number of the bookcases, even in the living room, we found these postcards in Venice a few summers ago that they are kind of cool. So then we just had them framed, and they are throughout the house. Here is a oil painting that we found. I've always had my eye on kind of oil paintings and pictures that I've seen. And so we found these at Worcester Woods Antiques in town. And John always kind of jokes. He's like, oh no, that's JR's great uncle, which is not. I mean, I guess there are some similarities, but no, it's something cool. And I really like the picture frame. Here are some more steamboat reference. So this is a picture of the Great Race on the Mississippi. So it's just a steamboat race. And then since this room is right off of the front hall, we brought the orange into the chairs, which is great. And the curtains, it is also another kind of Asian motif, which is awesome, with orange in it. So we're kind of trying to tie in the colors from the adjoining rooms. And my favorite thing in this room is the table lamp. So this was actually left from the previous owners, which is great because it works for the space. But no, we hang out here a lot and watch TV. We'll usually kind of eat in here if we're not eating in the dining room. And it's just a nice, cozy room. This light fixture, it is just a candelabra, and each little piece has a different face on it, which is kind of cool. And it's a really heavy chandelier. We had it at our old house, and we wrote it into the closing agreement that we got to take some of the light fixtures with us because we kind of fell in love with them, which I'm glad that we did because it really works well in this space. Now I'm going to show you the office. Now we're in the office. So this is great because it is right off of the den, and I work from home on Fridays, which is a nice perk to have. So I usually will work here on Fridays. These prints came from my mom. They were a Christmas present. And they are just covers of the Missouri Conservationist, which she has a subscription to. And it's cool just because these are all different photos that were taken around Missouri since I live in Missouri. The runner, this was actually left by the previous owners. We got a lot of good stuff from the previous owners. Just these chairs, I found them at World Market, and they kind of stuck out to me just because I really like cane furniture. My favorite thing in the office are these 2 pictures. So they are showing our previous house, which a friend of ours drew, and it's cool. It was an old 1920 Tudor house. And then this was actually a housewarming present from our friend Annie, who actually does watercolors of people's houses. So it's cool. It's like you get to have both houses right next to each other. Another thing that I collect are Toby mugs. So a lot of these are picked up over the years, or some of them have been birthday or Christmas presents. And actually, when my grandmother died, I was gifted the ones on the bottom, which are really, really tiny ones, which are kind of fun. And then that eagle came from my dad's desk. So that always just sat on his desk. So that was one of the things that I got from him. Now I'm going to show you the screened-in porch. This is the screened-in porch where we spend a lot of our time in the summer months, and it's great because it has a nice view of the yard. And then my favorite thing in the screened-in porch is the rug. So this rug is actually just from Ruggable, and I believe it is washable. So we got it a couple years ago. And the director's chairs, I actually found those at Home Depot. So it's kind of fun. There is a lot of seating. If there are a number of people out here, it's great to have a garden stool where you could just pull them over and people will sit on them. But they are also great for a table as well. And then the patio set, I believe we got this on Wayfair as well. When we first moved in, we were just trying to figure out what do we put in this space. So it works for now. I don't know if it'll stay, but the screened-in porch gets a lot of use in the summer months. And the fan is great because it's a nice breeze, but the best view is of the yard. So the blinds were already here, which is great because they are just a grass blind, and they actually really work really well when the sun is setting, since the back of the yard faces west. Now I'm going to show you the backyard. Now we're on the patio, which is an awesome spot to entertain when it's not too hot. So it is a brick patio, and a lot of the stuff was already here. The previous owners couldn't take their furniture with them, so they decided to leave it, which is great for us. It's nice, heavy wrought iron furniture. And there are really cool brick planters throughout the patio. And then for other pots, I did buy some cement planters from a store in town called Gringo Jones. And I like red and white impatiens. And right now, they're about half the size that they will get throughout the summer. So by the end of summer, they'll be huge balls of flowers. But a big selling point of the house was the big yard. When we first moved in, there was honeysuckle all around the property. So we removed all that. And then so far we put in about 55 trees. And it's great because hopefully it'll be just one big green wall when they all fill in. I counted the other day. I think we need about 20 more just to fill in the wall. But no, it's a nice size yard and it's great for the dogs to play around in. My favorite thing in the backyard are the peonies that I actually inherited. So right now they are not blooming, but in May they will be the prettiest hot pink that you will see. And I think there's about 100, 150 blooms on all of the bushes. So it's kind of hard for me to clip them all, but I will give them away to family and friends every year, which is always kind of a fun tradition. What home means to me is that it is welcoming and people feel at home and cozy when people come over. A lot of the adjectives that people use is that it's warm and inviting, and I think that is the best compliment that I can get about my house. I want people to feel at ease and welcome when I invite them over to my house.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.